Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 14th of June of 2023. Today we have some updates, so let's start. And first we're going to start with Dnipro River and with the area in the vicinity of Zaporozhye power plant. To be more precise, we are going to talk about this water reservoir. Today the Russian sources published the video from Nikopol, from the settlement that located on the opposite side of the Zaporozhye power plant. As you can see on the video, this is nuclear power plant, and the most important in this video is that there are no more river between Zaporozhye power plant and the Ukrainian bank of this water reservoir, and this is a very big problem for the Russians. Currently, I believe the Ukrainians can't use this area to probably for now to cross this Axe River. For now, they probably the ground is not so good, but as I understand, if the Ukrainians will try use if they try to use their infantry without armored vehicles, probably they do have possibilities to cross this Dnipro River and to attack Zaporozhye power plant and to attack the Russian forces in their back. If the Ukrainians are going to do this, of course, this is going to be a very interesting and very bloody operation to attack the Russians without support and without protection of armored vehicles, but we know that Ukrainians don't count their manpower. If we try to calculate the distance of at least of this part, we see that, for example, the distance in this area between the video where the video was made and the Russian bank is around of the river is around 5.66 kilometers or 3.52 miles, and based on the video we have, this distance have been reduced probably and the river probably is just a few maybe 100 meters, maybe 100 or 200 meters, nothing more. So at night the Ukrainians do have a very nice possibilities to attack the Russian positions, and probably this is exactly what the Ukrainians expecting. But these days the probably using the weather weapon like the Russians used during the Battle of Artyomovsk. There is a lot. This area is very rainy, so probably today is not the best time to start this offensive operation, but in a week or in two, this is going to be the best time to start attempts to cross Dnipro River, Dnipro River in the vicinity of Energodar. Now let's talk about the Kamianske Vasilievka bridgehead. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they managed to repel attacks of 128th Brigade, and recently there are no more great offensive operation in this area, but recently, after a few days of operational pause, the Ukrainians start making recos in combat on this territory. The Ukrainians made few attempts to attack the Russian positions during the previous days in the vicinity in direction of Petykhatki. Yesterday the Ukrainians were trying to attack along these forest lines in direction of Vremivka, but their attack was repelled on this forest line where the Russians have their own positions. Furthermore, the Russians published a video how the Ukrainians using this area, using probably another attempt to attack the Russian positions, got onto minefields, and as a result, as you can see, there are at least on this video 2 armored vehicles that are going along these forest lines, like light vehicles that probably currently brought some infantry, some reinforcements to restart their counteroffensive operation. The Russians start bombing this area, and later on this video you're gonna see how the Ukrainians got onto the minefields and was destroyed as a result of that. So the Ukrainians still haven't demined this area, and this is the reason probably why the Ukrainians took a decision to change their focus. And for example, today the Ukrainians made another attempt, another reco in combat in direction of Verkhnya Krynytsa. The Russians reported that they managed to repel this attack as well. So anyway, we see that the Ukrainians continue intelligence in combat, intelligence in force in this area, trying to prepare and to collect as much as possible information before upcoming restart of greatest counter-offensive operation from the Ukrainian side. Now we're we're moving to Bradley Square, to Orechov frontline. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they repelled the Ukrainians' attacks in the western flank of this territory. If you remember, the previous week during the first day counteroffensive operation, the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians on the line between Novodanilovka-Rabotina, and the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian positions from Novotokmachka, Novopokrovka. But today the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours there were no attacks in this area on the eastern flank of this territory, and the Ukrainians were attacking mainly, not attacking, but were sending some recco in combat on the western flank of this territory. So they were trying to secure like the distance from Orechov to Russian positions, like 9 kilometers, and the Russians managed to discover those commandos and scouts, and as a result of one of those operations, the Russians managed to capture a group of Ukrainian commandos in the forest, probably somewhere in this area, maybe not in the vicinity of Bradley Square. Maybe this icon was put on the map like softly, so this is not like real geolocated icon, but anyway, somewhere there, one of those commandos was captured by the Russian forces, and they were moved to the camp of the prisoners. Also, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours, when talking about this area, they attacked and bombed and destroyed the ammo depot of 65th Mechanized Brigade. This is the 5th Mechanized Brigade. And also the Russians attacked some positions of the Ukrainians on the Kamianske front line. And now we're moving further to east, to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. The Russians reported they destroyed ammo depot in the vicinity of Zalizhnitsyn, the small settlement that located in the vicinity of Gulay Polye. And now we are getting to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Today we got a lot of very interesting piece of information from this bridgehead. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, and to be more precise, Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, reported that since the beginning of the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation, so since the 4th of June, the Ukrainians lost 7.5 thousand soldiers killed or probably wounded on those two bridgeheads, like Vremivka tactical bridgehead and Bradley Square. 7.5 thousands just for 10 days. Of course, the losses are very heavy. Up to 2 brigades the Ukrainians lost during those attempts, and the Ukrainians continue losing their manpower, attacking the Russians all over the front line in this area. During the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians made few attempts to attack the Russian positions as usually along the forest lines in direction of Priutine. Those attacks were repelled from the Russian side. Also, the Ukrainians made few attempts to attack in direction of Rovnopol, this small settlement. Also, the Ukrainians tried to attack just using the forest lines, and probably in this case the Ukrainians were attacking from the north and from the west along these forest lines. The Russians reported that as a result of those attempts, the Ukrainians lost 5 tanks. The entire losses of the Ukrainians in the vicinity of Rovnopol, Livadne, Priutine, and Blagodatne, the Ukrainians lost 5 tanks on this bridgehead during those attacks. Furthermore, the Ukrainians continue attacking and continue advancing in the vicinity of Makarovka. Currently, as you can see, I have put this icon of Ukrainian flag. That means that Ukrainians established 100% over the settlements. The Russians still controls the hills on the west. Some sources are saying that the Russians were forced to step back from the first defense line, from the first forest line on the hills in front of Starozhova. Let's wait a little bit. Probably we need to wait a little bit, and then we got more information about that. The Ukrainians continue advancing, and today they made few attempts to attack in the vicinity in direction of Staromayorska using the forces of probably 25th Airborne Brigade or 35th Marine Brigade. That attack was repelled by the Russians, and the Ukrainians were using 2 companies and at the support of 4 tanks and 11 infantry armored vehicles. They were doing this. That attack was repelled, and the Ukrainians were forced to step back. Furthermore, the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked the Ukrainians reserves and their forces in the vicinity of Velika Novoselovka using the flamethrower systems and so on. On the eastern flank of this bridgehead, the Ukrainians made few attempts, or at least 2 attempts, or at least using 2 companies. They were attacking from Zolotaya Niva in direction of Novodonetsk. and the Ukrainians were attacking using the forest lines in the vicinity in direction of Novomayorsk. Both those two attacks were repelled by the Russian forces, and currently during the previous 24 hours the Ukrainians haven't managed to develop their bridgehead or their positions in the vicinity inside of Vremivka tactical bridgehead. This night we expect more attempts from the Ukrainian side, so we'll see, and the weather is going to get better from day to day, and probably we're going to see restart of Ukrainian offensive operation within the next few days. But currently we see some operational pause, and the Ukrainians are trying to use just the small squads, small commandos to check the bridgehead, check the ground, check the Russian positions, and they're trying to collect as much as possible information before the next waves of attacks. Now we are moving to Avdiivka and Donetsk frontline, and we haven't received much updates from this bridgehead. The Russians reported that they repelled Ukrainian attack in direction of Pervomaiska, so the Ukrainians are currently trying to return control probably over this road along the Donetsk, the capital of DPR. So probably they're trying to return control over these fortifications. Those attacks were repelled by the Russians. The Russians also published another video how they're bombing and shelling against the Ukrainian positions in Avdiivka. This is industrial area. Probably there were some Ukrainian forces, and the Russians managed to discover them, and after that they start bombing and shelling this territory, trying to destroy as much as possible Ukrainian soldiers. We haven't seen any photo video confirmation of destroyed armored vehicles or ammo depots, just another episode of Battle of Avdiivka. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that during the previous 24 hours the entire loss of the Ukrainians on this front line were around 205 soldiers, 9 armored vehicles and 2 artillery systems. By the way, let's get back a little bit to Vremivka tactical bridgehead and Bradley Square. The Minister of Defense reported that during the previous 24 hours the Ukrainians lost on this bridgehead on the south on the battle of the Zaporozhye 800 soldiers, so up to 2 battalions, 20 tanks, 45 infantry armored vehicles, or let's call it light armored personnel carriers, and 15 armored infantry vehicles and 5 artillery systems. And the thing is, and the most interesting is that during the previous day we haven't received almost nothing from these front lines. We were saying that the weather was bad, but from the other side we see that the Ministry of Defense today provided us very big numbers, so it's very interesting what is really happening there. So probably the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, took a decision to reduce the level of information that people can receive from these front lines. So probably this is the situation in this area. Now we're moving further, and now we're getting to Bakhmut, to Artyomovsk. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked the Ukrainian positions somewhere in Chasov Yar, and as a result of that they destroyed the ammo depot 57 Smakan motorized brigade. This is the 57th, and I remind you that this brigade probably is one of the most important forces and the main forces on the northern flank attack of the Ukrainians in direction of Berkhovka, as you can see. And probably the Ukrainians also took a decision to make a small operational pause in this area, or we need to expect some activation upcoming night. But anyway, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine almost every single day reported they managed to capture another 300 meters, 100 meters, but since the beginning of the greatest counter-offensive operation on the Artyomovsk flanks, the Ukrainians still haven't established control over even a single settlement, of the level at least like Andreevka or Klishevka. Right before I start making this video, we got update that Ukrainians launched small counter-offensive operation on the northern flank of Solidar. The Ukrainians were attacking from Vasyukovka in direction of Solidar, and the Ukrainians made another attempt to attack the Russians from Razdolovka in direction of Nikolaevka, Krasnopopovka. Currently there are very heavy clashes and fierce fightings in on this bridgehead, and for now there are no updates whether the Russians were able to repel this attack or not. Now we're moving to Seversk bridgehead. Today we got just one interesting update that as a result of artillery duels, the Russians destroyed the Ukrainian ammo depot 45th Artillery Brigade. Also, there were some changes on the map, on deployment map. The Ukrainians probably took a decision to concentrate their artillery systems in the vicinity of Lyman bridgehead. Currently there are 26 artillery brigade and 45th, and the main job of those brigades is to attack and not to allow the Russians in Kamianske forest to continue advancing. The distance between Ukrainian positions, artillery positions, and the Russian position in the forest is around from 7 till 10 miles or 12 till 17 kilometers. So for now, it's the very best position for the Ukrainians to use long-range artillery to stop the Russian advances in the forest. Now we're moving further, and let's talk about Lyman and Kupiansk frontline. The Ministry of Defense reported that the total losses of the Ukrainians were around 90 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles, and 5 artillery systems. There were no active clashes, just battles and fightings between the commandos and scouts groups from both sides, and there were no changes on the ground as well. And probably that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.